Hello and welcome to Imperium Code channel. So first, let's make sure that you have actually seen part 1 and part 2 of why you should not be client obsessed. If you haven't, I made sure to include in the description section below the links to those videos so that you can actually watch them. And it's critical to do so before proceeding and watching this one because you would need that to have the proper context and to have the right background so that you can get the most out of this video. So in the previous two videos, we have already discussed why you should not be client obsessed, what are the main issues that you should account to and be aware of so that you don't end up losing or damaging the client in any way throughout the project's lifecycle. And now it's time to actually start discussing what should you do in case you have actually aligned with the client, made sure that nothing might go wrong up to the best of your knowledge and their knowledge, and you made sure that your policies align, etc., etc., all of the things that we have covered previously. So now it's time to start offering your services and to start actually delivering what you have been promising the client to deliver. And in order to do so, you have to be mindful of the following points that we will be going through. And the first point is how to be straightforward, or actually being straightforward. You need to actually be straightforward with your client in a sense that the whole process of your company should be obvious, it should be explicit, it should be straightforward in a way that they can always know what is happening. So they can know that now they are in phase A. During phase A, we are doing some development. In phase B, we will be giving some feedback. In phase C, we would be fixing bugs. In phase D, we would be testing those fixes. And then what happens if there were also remaining bugs, or if the bugs were closed, how does the deployment happen, what are the terms of the deployment, etc., when is the code shared, all in all, etc. So everything that really needs to happen throughout the project's lifecycle in order for the project to be successful and for the client to be aware and kept in the loop should be mentioned and highlighted properly in different stages in your process. And that's about being straightforward. So imagine one time the client can so imagine a case where the client would actually, let's say, ask you about okay, why haven't I received the next update of the following feature? So what would you have to do? You would have to look at the project, you would have to see what happened, and then you would realize, for example, that the client failed to give you feedback for the previous component that is a main dependency to be closed before you can do the related component that he's asking about, he or she. So you end up realizing that, yeah, even though you have aligned at the beginning, your process wasn't straightforward enough and followed properly so that the client would not even have to ask that question in the first place, and then actually, let's say, do the right proper actions or take the proper steps so that you can have your feedback in time. So being straightforward is not really enough. What's more important is to follow up and to always make sure to be cautious enough that everything that you have actually spoke about with your client and agreed to during the first alignment period, and in the, let's say, you agreed to on the proposal, on your contracts, etc., everything is still valid, which means that the people who are supposed to give you feedback, the points of contact that are assigned, are still the same people. They are still responsive. They are giving you feedback within the delay you are expecting, and not more, not less. Actually, less is better in this case, but at least not more, so that it doesn't affect the whole timeline of the project or any other component from being released. So one, you need to be straightforward. Two, you need to be cautious about your process and about the alignment with the client to make sure that it's always valid, always true. Nothing has changed. You are still working in the same mindset and same dynamics. Everything is still fine. No force majeure occurred, etc. And then you have to also keep in mind what to do and how to always make sure that the project doesn't go out of line. In other words, it's not enough to just follow up, it's important to be able to enforce or to warn the client at the right time so that you avoid any delays from their side and from your side as well. So the same goes to your contractors or employees to make sure that you are delivering on time and asking the client to test in the agreed timeline as well. You cannot suddenly ask the client to test while they are on vacation. You have to be aligned on that first. So this is regarding alignment. And now, in order to really be efficient, because at the end, you will not only have one client, you would eventually end up with 10, maybe 100, maybe even more clients. So you need to make sure that your machine, that your company is actually um, equipped properly in order to scale, which means that you should minimize your CPU cycle, which implies that you need to minimize the effort and the energy required to serve each and every client, while making sure that the quality of service is still at the standards that you have promised your clients to deliver. So it's still consistent. So regardless of how many clients you end up having, you should have consistent quality of service. And this is related to resource management. And this means that any effort you put in the company, whether it's yourself, your employees, your contractors, your secretary, your assistant, anything that happens with across the whole stakeholders, you need to make sure that it's happening in the most efficient way. And you cannot really do that if you do not understand your process well and if you do not try to figure out where the bottlenecks are. And in order to also be able to do that, they are related to each other. And now you're gonna find out with me that it's not really about just saving time or saving energy or minimizing effort or like doing things faster. It's about doing things right, optimally, efficiently, and recognizing where are the issues in order to improve. Issues not necessarily are those that happen and that are damaging. Issues are sometimes are things that are just simply delaying the project, the process. They are bottlenecks, and they can be simply untied and fixed by doing things differently or using different tools, etc. And this brings us to delegation. And delegation is only possible when you actually understand each and every role in in the process, what each and every task requires. So accordingly, you can define your role. You can define the roles of your assistants. You can define the roles across the whole company, and you can start delegating the tasks. So eventually, you cannot do everything yourself. You need to start hiring people to help you out, and you want to make sure that when you do so, you can give them the right information, the right um, role description, the right onboarding process to make sure that they're actually in the right mindset and that they know their power. So, what are the things that they're allowed to do in your company, and what are the things that they cannot or they shouldn't take a decision on solely and should always revert back to you before doing so. So, it's really important in this case to define the rules properly and to really make sure that everyone understands what they're doing. And once you realize that, and once you do that, you need to then understand that when you put different roles, you need to start building a certain hierarchy and a certain way to preserve the so to allow the employees to be responsible and also accountable. And if anything goes wrong, you need to allow them. You need to have the right proper mechanism to allow them to be able to scale to escalate these issues. And you cannot really recognize an issue, or you cannot really find out about an issue happening in your company if you don't have the right escalation measures. Because if your clients, or sorry, if your employees are not, or contractors or assistants are not escalating what's happening in the company in terms of issues or problems or unexpected, let's say, scenarios, then you cannot really figure out what's happening, and you would be running your company blindfolded. You need to always be aware of the ups and downs. You need to always be aware whenever something generated an unexpected result so that you can treat it properly, you can treat the actual root cause and prevent any further damage on the current client, project, and also the future ones as well. So all of that becomes kind of a hassle if you think about it. That's why it cannot be done manually. You need to automate. You need to start adopting the right tools for your business so that you can actually implement all of those procedures and rules and privileges and the escalation policies and all of the measures in a way that is really efficient and without losing any piece of information. And obviously, you cannot do that on pieces of papers. You need to have the proper systems installed, and you might even need to develop your own solution eventually down the line if you didn't find the proper tools for your business. The important thing is that you need to eventually automate things. One, to ensure that no human errors, occur. Two, to preserve the data, and three, to minimize the hassle and to avoid all of the monkey work that you might end up having to do if you didn't have the proper tools. So, for example, sending the same kind of template email to all of your new clients each and every time, but you need to just change some few parameters. You don't need to always copy and paste. You just can adopt a tool and you give it the right parameters in terms of first name, last name, company name, whatever, and then the tool would generate the email for you and then send it on your behalf as well. And it's only when you start doing that that you can actually start gaining time and be able to focus on the things that really matters, and you would be able to actually start seeing what's happening in your company. Otherwise, you would be just too busy doing just typing bureaucratic emails and finishing up invoices and doing the accounting manually or whatever, and worrying about minor mistakes. So automation, it's key. It is the backbone of any company at least at this era that we're living in, and it's really important to have the proper automation and the proper tools actually within your hands, and not just to have a system. Anyone can have a system, but you need to also make sure that the system is actually serving your company well on in the proper and generating the proper return on investment. You don't want to be spending 90% of the time on a system that generates something that can be done in 5 seconds by you, and then it needs kind of 2 3 hours to be generated. You need to always have a system that is efficient and that can do things faster than you can and not slower. So for us, all of these things are important, and what's even more important, and usually what usually companies end up forgetting about is having the proper backup mechanisms, whether it's backups for the actual systems that we're talking about, or actually human resources backups. So you need to make sure that in case something happened to one of your employees or contractors or associates, assistants, whoever in your company, that you have the proper backup measures in place. You can onboard someone to take over quickly and fill up the spot so that you don't so that you avoid any delays. You have the proper risk management plan in place and ready to be executed without causing any damages on the client side. And you have the proper knowledge transfer measures or protocols in place so that whoever is being onboarded gets onboarded properly and gets handed over the right pieces of information so that they can proceed without delaying the project further. So having backups is something that is really critical to your business, and it's something that companies are usually um, not giving so much importance, not caring a lot about, because it's something that is usually does not occur the event of someone, let's say, unfortunately, uh, getting severely sick or not being able to show up for a couple of months to the company is a low probability to some people, or at least some companies might think. But however, especially nowadays and with the pandemic like COVID, it proved that no, people can suddenly catch a virus and then be away for a couple of weeks and might be unreachable. So you have to actually treat this as a high importance. And companies had to deal with this and start to care about this um, lately, but before the pandemic, barely anyone cared. And so make sure not to make this mistake and to have the proper backup procedures in place, whether it's for a human resource measure, human resources, or for the actual systems you have in place, or even the codes that you are writing to for your clients. You want to make sure that you don't end up losing that code base or the progress that you are doing. And finally, a very important point that companies are still kind of careless about is the security. And the security has really many levels. You have the security when it comes to the code base itself. So how secure is the solution that you are offering to your clients? And you have the security of the data of the users that are on that will be using this solution. You have to be also GDPR compliant. You have to worry about different things out there as well. And also you have the security of the actual code base in terms of where you are storing the code base and is it accessible by certain personnel who can eventually share it to the public, or might be malicious users, or um, most most importantly might be vulnerable themselves to be hacked. So imagine you share the code base with X, Y, and Z, and then Z is not aware about the phishing scams that exist in the market, and he or she ends up receiving an email and then clicking on a link and suddenly um, gets their credentials stolen, and then the code that you are sharing with them will also be at risk and might get stolen as well. So it's important to care about security not only on the technical level, but also when it comes to human resources training, making sure that the stakeholders that have access to your system and to the code base and to whatever piece of information have the proper training and are following the proper protocols and measures when they are sharing the data so that they can do it safely, when they are storing their credentials so that they can do that also safely, and when they are treating incoming emails to make sure to validate they are coming from the correct source or not before proceeding further. So after going through all of these points, instead of actually being client obsessed, you realize that you have to be business architecture obsessed. So you should really care about how you should implement the processes in your entire business, and more importantly, how to even design them in a way to prevent any issues from even occurring in the first place. And the thing is, the way you should address your business, building your business processes at the end, it's a machine, it's a stateful machine, just like a software. So the same way you try to build a good software, the same way you care about writing efficient code, minimizing the dependencies, being able to debug the code efficiently and figure out where the error is and be able to solve it in a way that it doesn't even occur again with the user, and the way you think about the UI and the user experience. All of that is applicable directly to the business as well. You should have the same mindset in terms of building your own business, in terms of how you should be optimizing your business and how your business should really be using the least invested effort and yet generating the highest client satisfaction. And this is what we care about in Imperium Code. This is how we actually do it in Imperium Code, and this is how we continue to do it. We address our business just like we address building good software of the highest quality possible up to the best of our knowledge, and each and every time with each and every iteration we improve, we make things smoother, more efficient, more scalable, and with at least the same or even better quality. So best of luck in your business, and we will be discussing further topics in our next videos. Stay tuned and thank you for your time.